Hello and welcome to this latest Neon update. This video covers all the new additions in 1.12 and 1.13. Amongst other things, I want to discuss the ability now to flatten warps so we can change the tempo of beats, not only in real time, but we can do that and make them a fixed tempo for exporting to other packages. The other great new addition is the particle engine, which can be used for creating drones and kind of evolving backdrops for your productions. That's been kept very much under wraps, and we'll be discussing that towards the end of the video. But before we dig into all the good stuff, I've had a lot of people contacting me asking me, how do we display the launch button in AUM? And I can't believe I could actually show people this. But the first thing you need to do is make sure you're on the latest version of AUM, 1.3.11. Only on that version can you display the launch button next to an effect slot. Now, I'm going to add a copy of Neon here to the instrument slot. And you'll notice that after I add it, the launch button for me is automatically added. And that's because I've actually turned this feature on previously, and AOM I think remembers this. But if you want to do it manually, you need to click on the hamburger control next to Neon and then click this MIDI controls icon in the top corner. You then click on the launch settings, and you see this icon here to the right of the toggle. It toggles on and off the launch button. Now you can do that for any control that Neon exposes. Now only in the latest version of AUM 1.3.11 I believe, we can now get a launch button to appear next to an insert slot. And as you can see here, it's appearing automatically for me because I've enabled this previously. But again, go through that set of instructions I've just given you, and you can get the launch button up on display. And this is important if you want to use the stacking function. Now the next thing I want to talk about is the experimental LAUNCHPAD feature, which started off with LAUNCHPAD mini support, and now we have LAUNCHPAD Pro. And as you can see here, I have a demo project, and it's a mixture of Neon and Helium. And you can see that all these items are showing up on the same LAUNCHPAD, which is quite a feat. Now, as many of you know, the LAUNCHPAD can only be used exclusively by a single app. But if you actually go to the launch button options screen with the LAUNCHPAD connected, you get these two extra options at the bottom of the screen. And the last one, the LAUNCHPAD mode, can be toggled between standalone and cooperative mode. Now, what you need to do is ensure that both Neon and Helium, at least one instance of each, is set to collaborative mode, and then this will work. Now, like I say, the new version of Neon doesn't actually yet support the LAUNCHPAD, but what you're seeing here is a pre-release preview, but it's coming in the next version. So another feature we added to 1.12 was the ability to flatten a warp. We've renamed that function to render just to avoid confusion. But what this does, it takes a loop of a fixed tempo and allows you to change it to another tempo. So in this case, we've got a simple loop here that's at 118 beats per minute. I'm just going to play that. Now, as you can see, warp is already turned on. So if I alter the current global tempo to something like 140 beats per minute and press play, we can preview Neon warping in real time. Now this is all well and good if you're intending to use the samples within Neon, but if you want to flatten that sample or render that sample, you can now do so within the warp toolbar, and we now have an unwarped sample at 140 beats per minute, which we can export as normal. Now, another nice addition to the media bay in Neon is the ability to drag and drop folders. Previously you had to copy files one at a time or use the import folder function. But now we can simply drag and drop a folder directly to the media bay and it will import the contents. As you can see, I've got a whole drum kit here, Asian kit, and I can just simply drag and drop this folder in to the media bay. Now, as well as that, we can also do the same thing in reverse. This will only work for apps that support import of folders, such as the Files app here. As you can see, I've just dropped that rock drum kit back into the Files app, and it's all there working perfectly. Okay, so let's move on to something really exciting, and that is a new particle engine. Now, the particle engine is a form of granular synthesis that's built into Neon. Now, this will be available in version 1.13, so the next version to be released. And it's great for building soundscapes and drones and things like that. So let's show you by finding a suitable wave in Media Bay. It's great for vocals, so I'm going to use this vocal here. Now, the first thing I'm going to do is position my cursor somewhere within that wave, and then I'm going to enable the particle engine, and immediately you can hear a drone. And as we move this cursor around, the drone moves with us. Now, if you take a look at the particle button, you'll notice it's got the little chevron in the top corner, which means when we long press this button we get additional options. So let's take a look. Now, if I reduce the particles per beat right down to 1, you can hear what's going on. I'm taking down the randomness and I'm going to drop the actual length of each grain, and you can hear a very short blip, and as we go up you can see the number of grains increasing, and then as we flesh out the length of those grains they morph into a solid tone. But to stop it being robotic in quality, we actually need to increase the randomness, which just offsets the start of each of these grains. Now, there's quite a few options here which I'm going to go over in detail, but notice at the bottom of the screen there's a start and a stop button, which starts and stops the generator. Now, if we take a look on the right side of this dialog, you'll see we have an attack, decay, sustain, release, which suggests that there's some kind of key input involved here. Now, because I'm running in standalone mode, I can long press on the MIDI button to bring up a MIDI input. Now, if I enable the output again, start the engine going, and then flick this switch back to key envelope instead of drone, and you'll hear the noise stop. Now the envelope generator with its ADSR take over, and if we press C4 on the keyboard, we emit a sound. Now, because this button is set to key tracking, whenever we press any other notes, it'll transpose that sound, and we're able to go an octave above and below C4. Now, that's all well and good, but what happens if the sound was not in tune? That is, the position of the cursor is not on a C note. In that case, we need to tune the sample, and we do that using the tuning knob. Now, the rest of the items in this dialog correspond to something called orbit mode. Now, currently all we've done is we've had a static cursor position, and we're playing a drone at a specific spot, which is great for kind of finding choir sounds within a sample. But what happens if you want to create some kind of evolving backdrop? Well, one way is to actually create a selection and then set the orbit speed to something other than 0. Now in this case a value of 1 means that it will actually span the entire selection within 1 beat. So if we increase that, it will slow down the speed of transition. Now I want you to also notice this reset orbit button, which is currently set on reset. That means that every time we press a note, then that cursor will restart at the beginning of the selection and then do its thing. But if we set that to continuous, it continues on its path and it's not interrupted by additional key presses. So as you can see here, increasing the orbit speeds alters the duration at which it takes the cursor to travel across that selection. Now currently we're in ease out mode, but we can change the orbit mode between a number of default values. So there's also a linear ping pong, a forward, a backwards and a random mode. But I'm going to put it in reverse mode, and this switch is currently set to reverse, which means the grain playback is in reverse. But you can hear a difference when you switch to forward playback. So even though the cursor's moving backwards, the play direction is forwards currently. So again, you could have some fun with the random mode and have it just randomly jump around, especially when you have these staccato, like 1 or 2 emissions per beat. You can get some quite interesting stuff. Probably not so well on vocals, but on a variety of sounds, it does sound quite good. Now, if I temporarily disable orbit mode and ensure that I'm connected to my external keyboard, which I am, I can manipulate the modulation wheel on the keyboard, and that modulation wheel, the full extent of the movement will transverse that selected area. So the great thing about it now is that we can use the mod wheel to create a kind of a fluctuation in tone. And also the pitch bend. We can use the pitch bend to pitch up and down. Okay, so let's just switch out this sample for something a little bit different. Let's try and find something where we've got a few different parts to it. Okay, I like that one. So let's just load this sample. Now, this particle mode can also be used in slice mode. So I've just enabled slice mode. And I'm just going to draw a few slices over these various oohs and ahs, and I'm going to turn on, well, if I just play these via the internal keyboard, so you can hear them as they stand right now, they just start and stop because we've only got a tiny bit of sample there. Obviously, we turn the particle engine on now and play those notes. You'll see that we can sustain them. So the great thing is you could create a load of slices that represent the things that you want within your song and then trigger them remotely via MIDI. And of course you could use this with orbit mode, or even with your modulation wheel that can move backward and forward within that sample. So you could send those notes to trigger the relevant part of the sample, send a mod wheel controllers to control where within that selection it plays, and pitch bend if you want to do some pitching. So I think you'll agree it adds a lot of potential to Neon and opens up a lot of future ideas that I could add, such as scrubbing on the timeline and things like that. Okay, so I think that just about covers this introduction to the particle engine. I'm just going to finish off with one more little example, just to give you a better idea of how it could be used in practice. that's it for this video. Don't forget to give a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel if you haven't, and I'll see you next time.